Well, good morning. I'm Josh Mankler. I'm the United States Attorney for the Southern District of Indiana. Many in this community here in Plainfield, of course, remember December of 2015 and early January of 2016. In response to some very specific, very graphic threats over social media that threatened mass shootings, bombings, and violence in this area, on December 17th, 2015, Plainfield High School closed the school for a day. Subsequently, Danville High School did the same and closed their school for a day. Those threats further led to the closing of the shops at Perry Crossing on December 18th, 2015, and a movie theater there. The shops were reopened after law enforcement searched the area and used bomb-sniffing dogs. When school resumed in January here in this area, students were not allowed to bring backpacks to school, and the police were stationed outside of the school buildings. This was in response to threats from an individual who labeled himself, who was only known at that time as Brian Kill, K-I-L. His stated goal through social media, which we received, in his words, he wanted to be the worst cyber terrorist that ever lived. The evidence showed he was well on his way to achieving that goal. He victimized individuals in 10 federal districts. Brian Kill used a similar pattern to commit his crimes, each one involving exploiting our youth. Through social media, he would contact victims, usually minor girls. He would claim to have pornographic images of those girls. He would threaten to release those images on social media unless they would send him more images of themselves, more pornographic images. This is commonly called sextortion. He continued repeating those requests, and here in Plainfield, we found out what happened if you refused to comply. He made very specific, very clear threats to the school in Plainfield. Those threats are very graphic. I won't repeat them now, as I cannot. But he threatened to kill the victim at the school, to kill the victim's entire class, to claim to have pipe bombs, a rifle, firearms. He made similar claims with regard to Danville Public High School, threatening to kill people he considered as subhumans, and he made threats specifically with regard to the shops at Perry Crossing, threatening to deploy bombs and then shoot people as they left the shopping mall. Law enforcement responded here in this community and federally. We used traditional law enforcement techniques to try to trace Brian Kill back in January of 2016. We have an excellent group of cyber investigator, but those techniques initially proved ineffective. The individual labeling himself as Brian Kill used what is referred to as the Tor network, T-O-R. This was a sophisticated dark web which allowed him to mask his IP address. He thought he could not be found, and in the cyber world, this was the modern equivalent of looking for a needle in a haystack. Many have forgotten about this case, I doubt in this community, but many have forgotten about this case. But the team of investigators behind me never forgot about this case. On Thursday, August 3rd, 2017, a team of agents from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Indiana State Police, the Plainfield Police Department, and the Brownsburg Police Department, as well as law enforcement agents from California executed a search and arrest warrant at 9617 Eucalyptus Drive in Bakersfield, California. The judge in California issued a federal no-knock warrant, which allows agents to enter without announcing their presence. This was because of the fear of destruction of evidence. At that address in Bakersfield, California, computer equipment, removable data storage, like thumb drives, were seized, and an individual was taken into custody. That individual is Buster Hernandez, age 26, of Bakersfield, California. He was arrested on a federal arrest warrant issued on August 1st, 2017, out of the Southern District of Indiana. On Friday, August 4th, 2017, Hernandez appeared in federal court in Bakersfield on the federal charges out of the Southern District of Indiana. There, a federal judge ordered him held without bond and removed in the custody of the United States Marshals. He is now being transported in custody to the Southern District of Indiana to face those charges. Here at this press conference, I am here to announce that the cyber terrorist who we knew as Brian Kill has been arrested. His name is Brian Hernandez, age 26 years, and he will face federal charges in the Southern District of Indiana. The federal charges that he will face are threefold. First, sexual exploitation of a child, or sextortion, for sextorting victim 1 in Plainfield between September 2014 and January 2016 rather. That crime carries a mandatory minimum penalty of 15 years in federal prison and a maximum penalty of 30 years in prison. He also faces charges for threats to use an explosive device. That occurred on or about December 17th, 2015. For that charge, he faces a penalty of 10 years in prison. He also faces charges for threats to injure another person using interstate commerce. That crime carries a penalty of up to 5 years in prison. All of those charges and the evidence supporting those charges are contained in a 37-page federal criminal complaint, which has been provided for you. I would like to make 4 points about this case. First of all, the complaint obviously only identifies 3 victims. As I mentioned before, law enforcement has identified victims in at least 10 federal districts, possibly more. If you think you are a victim or you know of somebody who has been a victim, there is a website to contact at the FBI. It is the word TIPS, T-I-P-S, period, FBI, period, gov, G-O-V. So it's tips.fbi.gov, or call the number 317-595-4000. As I mentioned, the complaint identifies 3 victims. The first victim from Plainfield, victim number 2, who was sextorted from the state of Michigan, and victim number 3, additionally, who was sextorted here in the Southern District of Indiana. And as detailed in the complaint, the sextortion that Mr. Hernandez, also known as Brian Kill, used was so strong as it caused that victim to attend a community forum that was held at the Plainfield High School on January 19th, 2016, and report back to Mr. Hernandez what in fact was going on and what law enforcement was looking for. That's point 1. Point 2, which is a question I'm sure that is going through all of your minds, is how did law enforcement catch him? On this, I'm going to be fairly cryptic. Mr. Hernandez, aka Brian Kill, stated he wanted to be the worst cyber terrorist that ever lived. Certainly in our society, there's always somebody that's standing up, trying to take that title now that he's been arrested. And all cyber terrorists have a goal not to be caught. They use the technology and social media that we all enjoy, that does so many good things, and the privacy laws that we all have that do so many good things to their advantage. As I mentioned earlier, he used the Tor network and the dark web, which allowed us not to be able to find his IP address. The work that has been done to find him has been astronomical. Over 100 federal and state search warrants have been issued and used in this case, searching things such as email accounts and Facebook accounts, trying to find, as I said, the needle in the haystack. More than 200 grand jury subpoenas have been issued, as I stated, trying to find the needle in the haystack. We had court authorization for over 20 types of electronic surveillance, including, finally, a Title III electronic wiretap on Mr. Hernandez's computer. We installed a poll camera outside the residence in Bakersfield, and we conducted hundreds and hundreds of hours of surveillance. And this is not just visual surveillance, although we did that. This is online surveillance, looking again and again for the needle in the haystack. That's how law enforcement caught him. At the end, and the thing I'm going to be a little bit cryptic about, we used a device which is called a NIT, N-I-T, which is a piece of computer code as detailed in the complaint. If that NIT is installed in a image or document and a cyber terrorist opens that, it does allow law enforcement to find the IP address. I cannot give you a more detailed explanation except to say the rest of the technique is law enforcement sensitive. The third point I want to make, and I think it's an important one, is that sextortion is a real crime. Individuals are looking to exploit our children. Individuals are looking to put communities in fear. Individuals are looking to shut down schools and shopping malls. We constantly, all of us behind us, try to provide training and education to our youth. I know our youth thinks they can take a picture of themselves and send it to their friends, and that goes away. But the reality of it is it doesn't go away. You don't control where that image goes. Many times it ends up in bad hands. And in this case, those images ended up in the hands of an individual who is a proclaimed cyber terrorist who is looking to sextort the victims. So be aware, if you're a youth and you are taking pictures of that and sending it to your friends, those pictures don't go away, and they can and will and often do end up in the wrong hands. The final point that I want to make, and I think it's an important one, is about the Southern District of Indiana. And clearly, I'm very provincial, and I take a lot of pride in what we do. Buster Hernandez, also known as Brian Kill, never stepped foot in Indiana. He never put one foot in Indiana. Now he's being transported by the United States Marshal Service via Con Air to this district to face federal charges. He will be in federal court in the Southern District of Indiana to face those consequences. For individuals that victimize our children here in the Southern District of Indiana, these men behind me will give full meaning to the long arm of the law. Even if you are in Bakersfield, California, and you never set foot in the Southern District of Indiana, you will face the harsh consequences of a federal prosecution. And just to make it clear, what are those consequences? It's not probation, it's not time served, it's not community corrections, it's not a halfway house or home incarceration. The consequences for exploiting our children in the Southern District of Indiana is federal prison, behind a wall, usually in another state. If you don't believe me, ask former Subway pitchman Jared Fogle, who these men investigated. And he chose to exploit one of our children. He's now living behind prison walls for at least 15 years. If you don't believe him, you can go up to Michigan and ask former Park Tudor coach Kyle Cox, two-time state basketball champion, coached players that play at the top colleges in the NBA. He's now living inside the prison walls for 14 years. The consequences for exploiting our children in the Southern District of Indiana are harsh. And these individuals will not rest until the individual that exploits our children is identified, investigated, federally charged, and sent to prison. The individuals behind me have a list for federal prosecution, and it is a list that nobody wants to be on. I'm happy to be joined by the individuals behind me that worked for 20 months that did not give up on this case, whose agencies and under their leadership worked to bring this individual to justice. And without them, I wouldn't be standing here today. The first is my partner, the special agent in charge of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the lead federal law enforcement agency on this case, Jay Abbott. Jay?
Thanks, Josh. Good morning. To the Brownsburg and Plainfield Police Department and Indiana State Police, many, many thanks from the FBI for your steadfast contributions to this case. We couldn't have done it without you. This was a very unique and complex investigation that highlights the tenacity, perseverance, expertise, and dedication of all those involved, but particularly the FBI. This was a top priority of our Crimes Against Children Task Force. Innovative techniques were utilized, solutions to difficult problems were created, and partnerships with key private sector partners, not often done, were developed, all to bring this case to a very successful conclusion. I want to especially recognize Assistant Special Agent in Charge Greg Massa, Supervisory Special Agent Mike Langeman for their hands-on leadership in this matter. I especially want to recognize Special Agent Ryan Barrett and Special Agent Andrew Willman for their investigative expertise and tenacity. They never gave up. They knew what this meant to the community, and they never gave up. It took a team with many contributions, but these individuals, with Brownsburg Police Department's Jennifer Barrett and Assistant United States Attorney Tiffany Preston, made extraordinary efforts to advance this case, and of course were absolutely integral to its success. In the late fall, in December of 2015, very graphic and threatening remarks on the internet were directed at Plainfield High School students, teachers, personnel, and the entire community. Shortly after that, in January of 2016, January 19th, I was one of those officials who stood before concerned parents and community members in that Plainfield High School auditorium to try and provide some answers. We were all frustrated with the circumstances that we were facing. We promised that we would not give up and that we would find the person who had been threatening the high school and victimizing young girls. Now, I know for some, it will never have been done soon enough because of what you had to live with for perhaps the last 2 years. But this is what the FBI does best. We undertake the most difficult and complex investigations, never give up, and bring these cases to a conclusion. The FBI takes a solemn oath to protect the American people and uphold the Constitution. And I will tell you today, I am extremely proud to say that in this case, the FBI exhibited this mission with a passion and a purpose to serve its community. And I'm immensely proud of our FBI personnel for this amazing work. Thanks, Josh.
Thank you. As I stated earlier, Mr. Hernandez, a.k.a. Brian Kill, is alleged to have committed crimes in 10 separate federal districts that we know of. I'm very provincial. I would put our prosecution and investigation team on cyber crimes, particularly crimes against children, up against any team in the country. One of the reasons is our long-standing partnership with the Indiana State Police, who have been leaders for many, many years in the investigation of these type of crimes and has selflessly devoted the resources necessary to prosecute these type of crimes federally. And a big reason behind that is the superintendent, Doug Carter. So I'm glad the superintendent is here to join me today for what I see as yet another in a long line of success stories of our partnership. Superintendent.
Thank you very much. Every keystroke, every image, every video that's sent or received is recorded forever. My gosh, I hope people hear that. Even for sick individuals like Brian Kill, I hate to even reference his name, thought he could hide under the cover of the dark web. Not with the expertise of the FBI in the United States of America. He did not hide. So is today the day, for those that are watching, that is your day. When you go to sleep and when you wake up, is today your day that we'll find out who you are? I certainly hope so. I couldn't be more proud to serve with the people that I'm standing with today, because I know that the level of sacrifice and commitment is absolutely the most significant part of who they are, but most importantly, what they represent. To the community of Brownsburg, Plainfield, specifically Plainfield, it doesn't seem like it was that long ago, and probably many people thought that since we were at a place where we couldn't do much more, we weren't doing anything. And by golly, nothing could be further from the truth. And unfortunately for me, I'm having those experiences all over Indiana right now, but nothing could be further from the truth. And we will do everything within our power every single time, sometimes at personal expense, and I'm okay with that too. Number 3, to the victims, the young victims in Plainfield, in Indiana, in the Midwest, and around our country, my gosh, I hope you'll accept my sincerest apology. But also know that we will do everything within our power to help you always. We will always, always do what we can do to help you. To the moms and the dads, and to the teachers and the administrators and the business owners here in the city of Plainfield. You taught me a lot, very personally. You taught me a lot. You taught me a lot on that January day when I was able to stand with my dearest friend Jay Abbott in that auditorium of what happens when a community coalesces around each other. When you realize the value of human life and you realize the value of your day. That was an extraordinary moment in time for me to be able to look out into that full auditorium and experience that, even though at that time some of you were very angry with us. But again, you taught me a lot about human life, and I'm very, very grateful. And finally, to the unsung heroes, Jay referenced several of them from the FBI. Jennifer Barnes, Chris Carter, the multiple FBI agents, Jiminy Christmas. The folks that work so tirelessly behind the scenes, knowing that they probably will not get the return that they give, but that's also something that they're willing to do. I'm very, very grateful. So from a very appreciative superintendent of the State Police in Indiana, I say thank you, and with my sincerest of gratitude, thanks and respect for those that I'm standing with today.
Thank you, Superintendent. I appreciate it. This case obviously had a local impact here in specific communities, and we had partnerships with those local police departments who worked right alongside us and never gave up to solve this case. I'm happy to have the Plainfield Police Chief, Daryl Krager, with us here today. Chief.
Good morning. First off, I would like to give my sincerest thanks to this task force that worked on this from almost the beginning. These gentlemen here, especially Superintendent, who gave me a lot of encouragement when things looked pretty bad and gloomy. I also like to recognize Plainfield Town Board, Plainfield Police Commissioners, Plainfield school officials, who all understood what we were up against. And almost from the beginning, They told us that this would take a long time to solve. And they weren't kidding. As an old saying goes, a 1,000-mile journey begins with the first step. Our first step started in late December 2015, and 2,074 miles later ended in Bakersfield, California. While Brownsburg and State Police and myself, our officers may not have been with these men when they did that search warrant, we were certainly kept in touch with them. They let us know as soon as it happened, and I, for one, needed some good news after a long week of last week saying goodbye to two of our fellow officers here in central Indiana. I'm sure that many of the Plainfield town officials and school officials would love to get up here and talk also, but I just know on behalf of them, this has really brought a good solution, a final solution to this case. And I just want to tell the people of Delphi that their case too will be solved with these gentlemen, that their agencies behind them, and you can see they just don't ever give up. So I can't express my thanks enough to all the agencies involved in this, local, state, and federal, and hopefully that we'll never have to come together again on such an issue. Thank you.
I've got to clarify a mistake I made. Chris Cecil is in the back. I think I called him Chris Carter. I didn't mean to do that. But Chris and Jennifer Barnes, both are sitting in the back, and I'm so very proud of the service. Thank you all. Thank you all so very much.
Present with us today is another one of our partners who worked on this case, Brownsburg Chief of Police Joe Grimes. Chief.
Good morning. I would just like to take this opportunity to show my appreciation and gratitude to the FBI, U.S. Attorney's Office, State Police, and Plainfield Police Department. Without these type of partnerships, resolution does not come to these types of cases. We're fortunate that the diligence of the men and women that work alongside with the FBI were able to come to fruition and bring this individual to justice. We appreciate this opportunity, continuing this partnership, and we look forward to continued growth and development in order to safeguard our young men and women within our communities and to safeguard our communities. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Questions?
Josh, obviously you've read all the Facebook postings and it's back and forth. Would you care to characterize basically what would appear to be a very malevolent, hateful mindset that not only wanted to sow chaos, but actually to sow terror into the hearts of anybody, as well as mocking law enforcement, but you're never going to find me?
Sure. So you read the complaint. It's very graphic. The individual who called himself Brian Kill wanted to be the worst cyber terrorist that ever lived. Certainly in 10 federal districts, he engaged in a pattern of behavior that was cruel, I think the evidence shows, to his victims. And when the victims, many of whom had enough courage to say enough is enough, he turned his attention on the town, and in this case, in the town of Plainfield, threatening not only his victims, but as shown in the complaint, threatening the teachers, threatening the fellow students, threatening people in shopping malls. The definition of terrorism is exactly what occurred in this case. I think we can see from the amount of people here from the town, they are relieved that that individual has been arrested. And as the United States Attorney, I cannot disagree with Mr. Brian Kill, Mr. Hernandez, who labeled himself as wanting to be the worst cyber terrorist that ever lived.
exploiting children than to making threats of violence what either angered him, and did he make similar threats of violence in any of these other communities?
Sure. So what his motive was for doing this would be speculation by my part, so I really can't speculate to that. But I think what you see in sextortion crimes, these are not, as some would believe, sexual crimes. They have nothing to do with sex. They have to do with violence and control. And so what you see here in this case is ultimate control through threats of violence, which is certainly consistent with what you see in crimes of sextortion. As to the other districts, I cannot speak to that, except to say many of the other districts where we have received complaints experienced many of the same type of threats when the victim's demands, with the demands that he put on the victims, were not met.
Are there any potential charges against any enablers or others who may have even not intentionally been involved with him?
Certainly, yeah. The investigation continues, like all of these. We're looking for more information about how widespread this was. As you can imagine, we identified this guy about a week ago, and as soon as we were comfortable with the evidence as outlined in the complaint, we wanted to get him off the streets immediately before and put a stop to this.
Are you able, from what you've gathered on him, to view his network to determine, are most people either just observing him, or does he have the potential, just like he referred to the Columbine killers, does he have the potential to almost become a darknet cult hero where he's got other people lining up behind him watching what he did?
Sure. Well, as we mentioned, we executed search warrants, seized all the digital evidence, hard drives, computers, thumb drives. That search process is ongoing. The evidence we have is detailed in the complaint. But we are concerned about copycats, somebody that would try to follow this, and certainly I can speak only for the Southern District of Indiana that if that is done here, they will face the same fate and the same dedication and be brought to justice. One of the reasons I did point out our success in a lot of high visibility cases is to point out, there are consequences. Society here in the Southern District of Indiana should be quite comforted by the fact to know maybe this won't deter people because they think they won't get caught, but when they are caught, they will get hammered. That's what we do in this district.
In these other 10 possible cases, have they been going on for years before the Brian Kill threats started?
At a similar time frame.
Do we know what states? Can you reveal those?
Sure. California, Wisconsin, Michigan, Illinois.
Any idea how many man-hours were put to this case, and is that more of a sign of how difficult it was, or just the determination?
Yeah, I haven't actually done the math. But it's clearly both. It was difficult. 100 search warrants, one after another, for 20 months is a lot of work. Hundreds and hundreds of hours of surveillance, online surveillance, profiling and excluding victims, profiling and excluding targets, court orders. It's a lot of work for the attorneys, the agents, and the officers in this case. So two things. One, it was a lot of work, as I made clear. And two, as your question begs, would others have given up? I don't know. I just know this crew behind me did not give up and continue to pursue this. Jay, would you like to talk to that?
Yeah, I'd like to just add to that comment. First off, Josh did allude to the fact that we're very forward, I think, in the country in our capabilities for these types of cases. But certainly our Child Exploitation Task Force, whenever we have cases that involve the children being exploited, we investigate those with a real sense of urgency. We give a lot of dedication and time, and we never give up on all the cases that we have. But certainly when it comes to children, the most vulnerable segment of our society, that has to be investigated with a real sense of urgency. And despite the long period of time it took, that's what we were doing every day, and in a manner to try to get it to a conclusion so we could stop what was happening to what we've learned, young girls across the country.
Jay, not to glorify this alleged suspect, but rather to get a deeper understanding of how complex this investigation was. It almost seems as the FBI itself had to go through a learning curve to dig so deep into the dark web. Could you walk us through that?
Well, as Josh gave you the specifics as far as we can go, but what I can tell you, it was very sophisticated. And it was extremely complex for us to be able to follow that trail. But that's what the FBI does best. We take things that are hard, and if not for the FBI, who? And we have a number of assets back at Quantico, Virginia, in our Operations and Technology Division, who are able to provide the brightest minds and techniques to be able to help us with these very type of cases. And we did have that type of help from our national resources in the FBI back in Washington, D.C., and at Quantico, and other very capable minds within the FBI to help us.
Was your Quantico support staff able to share with you any psychological makeup they made as you pursued Brian Kill?
Yeah, absolutely. And that helped in the investigation. It wasn't the conclusive aspect, but it certainly all helps. And we used every asset that we felt would be applicable to getting us where we needed to be in this investigation.
And can you share the specifics of some of that profile with us on the type of guy you were looking for?
Yeah, you know, that would be a detail for my special agents to answer directly, and that will probably come to light, I think, in the indictment as we go forward in the complaint. But I couldn't give you specifics, although I was very pleased when my special agents contacted me from California and advised that it was over.
How key was it to keep Brian Kill to keep engaging with Victim 1 when actually Victim 1 at some point became an FBI agent?
It was an aspect of the investigation that was important, but certainly not the only thing. And again, the complexity of this case required many facets to come together. And the special agents involved with this case and the computer forensics that had to be done by those who were helping with this case is really complex and complicated. As Josh referenced earlier, the evidence that's been seized is also encrypted. Some of it in a very clever way. But we're going to be getting assistance with that from our experts at Quantico, and we're going to be able to get into that, hopefully. And that's going to be a treasure trove, I think, of evidence that we're going to have to go through as we determine additional victims and perhaps enablers.
Does this guy have any kind of day job, or what can you say about his background that would give him the either expertise and training, the skills to operate around
Don't know.
the dark web? And, you know, where do you learn all this?
I could tell you, and this is in the criminal complaint, that we obtained a Title III to monitor his electronic messages that were sent from the computer that we identified. The crimes were ongoing. He was surveilled, including with a poll camera. He left the house one time in 30 days.
During the apprehension, Mr. Hernandez, did he make any statements, or did he show any shock or surprise that he was being?
Can't comment on that.
You talked about all these federal resources that were also part of it. There was a lot of state resources as well. You guys have a really good working relationship with the state police task force, and they were instrumental in trying to get this guy off the street. Right?
Yeah, Indiana State Police is one of, again, we are so lucky to be in the state of Indiana, particularly in the Southern District, because of the expertise that's been developed in this area. Indiana State Police, led by Superintendent Doug Carter, and just his impassioned support for these types of investigations, have developed a capability that really, I don't want to sound overconfident, but certainly we have abilities because of the work that we've done, and in the cases that we've gained experience in, that we are able to do these cases unlike most other jurisdictions, for sure.
What did investigators learn from this case that will either prevent this from happening again down the road, or if it does happen, keep suspects from wreaking so much havoc?
You know, because of the sophistication that people that this person used in utilizing the Tor network, it's very difficult. And unfortunately, these tools are more readily available for those who know where to look for them on the internet. And if they take the time to research it and understand it, they can do things like this. But those persons also need to understand that the FBI, and particularly in the Southern District of Indiana with the Indiana State Police and the partnerships that we have, they're not going to be successful. They're going to be caught at some point. And the learning curve for us on this, we knew what we had to do, but things have to come together in a certain way for us to get success, and that's why it takes a long time. And then we also have to be as certain as possible. And so each time we do these, we'll be a little bit better and a little bit quicker, but it's not, that's not to promise that it wouldn't take the same amount of time, if not longer, on the next one.
For folks not familiar with the dark web, what's the basics?
Sure. So you have the dark web and the Tor network. So if I logged on to, or you logged on to your computer at home, it'd take about 2 court orders to identify one to the service provider, and then one to somebody that holds a big block, Sprint, AT&T, and they could say, here's the subscriber for that computer. For the Tor network or the dark web, you can install something that randomly puts your computer through about 20, 30, 40 random other addresses, IP addresses throughout the world, all run by volunteers, all anonymous, which allows you to mask your IP address, particularly when you use numerous IP addresses, numerous Facebook accounts. This was really looking for a needle in a haystack. The 100 hours of surveillance online and search warrants were to exclude addresses, to focus on one, and then using the specific data code or NIT, that would probably be the only way you could identify the IP address, and having, in this case, Brian Kill or Mr. Hernandez upload an image onto that, which allowed us to identify his IP address at that time and be able to react very quickly with the court orders to identify that, and then follow through with the physical surveillance and electronic surveillance of his communications and his comings and goings. But it was very, very difficult. There's nothing illegal about the Tor network or the dark web, and there's nothing illegal about people wanting internet privacy. I completely understand that and respect that. All of us do. We respect the Constitution. But it does make it difficult when somebody uses that. And as you've seen, we follow the 4 corners of the law. We did not secretly get somebody's internet. We did not secretly steal anybody's emails. We went through a judge on everything we did, or through our grand jury, to do this case the right way, so it'll stand up in court.
Do you have any priors?
Can't comment on that.
This NIT technology that you used, I'm reading through the indictment. Is this something sort of like a virus that you put on an image that the suspect then downloaded and put onto his computer?
That's about as good an explanation as I'm comfortable giving you. But yeah, it's a code of data that law enforcement can embed, and when that data code is embedded and the bad guy uploads it onto his computer thinking he's going to get an image or a message, that allows us to immediately identify the IP address. The cyber terrorists are getting better at that and knowing when that NIT is included, so that's why I can't get more specific about it. And sometimes they can identify when they've uploaded it and quickly change their IP address. But yeah, that's a fair characterization of what the NIT is.
Okay, folks, thank you.